In the Middle Ages, the walls of the city and castles were its most important defense. The walls were actually two walls in one. The walls were built with a gap in between. The gap was filled with stone and mortar. The mortar would bind the stones together much like cement would. Mortar is a mixture of water, sand, and lime. The stones in the outer wall were cut more precisely. The outer wall, when completed, would often be coated over with plaster and whitewash. When making the walls, they weren't just built on top of the ground. The builders would dig a trench into the ground to give the walls a solid base. The outer wall also had walkways along the top and added defense. The defending army had to have a way to fight back, so they built arrow leaves inside the wall so they could kill the enemy without being seen. They also built in a death chamber. This was used for trapping the enemy if they were able to break through the entrance and killing them by pouring hot water, oil, or coal on them. The walls were also built to take advantage of natural formation in the land, like hills, mountains, and water. These design elements would be found in walls of both European and Middle Asian cities.
In the Middle Ages, castles were where all servants and military forces lived. While the castle had an important defensive role, it also had to be able to support regular day-to-day activities. Castles also had to provide necessities for living, such as sanitation, fresh water, and cooking, which were especially important when the castle was under siege. Castle layout depended upon local demands and the purpose and function of each castle. For example, a castle built on the turbulent borders of England and Wales might have been built to be as strong and as defensive as possible. Alternatively, castle in a more peaceful and prosperous part of southern England may have been designed to culture an air of luxury and magnificence for a local lord and lady. In our castle, we have a garden, a great hall where the lord meets visitors, a dining hall, sleeping areas, a kitchen, and a bunch of other rooms. In the Middle Ages, the master stonemasons who designed the castles would have general drawing of the plan, but would then design templates that could be used by the other stonemasons to cut stones precisely to accomplish the overall design. Castles were often built on or near quarries to make it easier to get the stone to the building site. Also, they didn't have an unlimited supply of stone, so if one broke, they had to still use it. The architecture is one of the most important parts of the castle. If one thing in the castle wasn't stable or secure, the entire castle would fall apart.
Gothic architecture is most famous for the cathedrals that were built in the Middle Ages. Our cathedral is a good example and solved a number of design problems that challenged medieval cathedrals. These earlier cathedrals were often cold, dark, and confining. These earlier buildings served their primary function, but the Gothic innovations allowed architects to design for the beauty in these spaces. Stained glass windows and detailed carvings like gargoyles, which transformed gutters, were important elements. Before Gothic innovations in architecture, it was hard to make a tall cathedral because of all the weight that would make the building collapse. Gothic buildings were so tall because of the flying buttresses. Flying buttresses helped spread out the weight of the heavy, tall walls. It also made the cathedral more beautiful. The pointed arch was another key part of Gothic architecture. The pointed arch is a little design element that also helps spread out the weight of the heavy ceilings and build bulky walls. They are much sturdier than pillars that were used in our town's first church.
Trading in the Middle Ages was a big industry, much like it is today. If you lived in Italy and you wanted spices, you would have to get them from the Middle East or India. Being a trader could bring great wealth because people often sold their wares at high prices, mostly to nobles and very wealthy people. As a result, spices became a status symbol to show how wealthy one was. There were also bad sides to trading. Trading could be very dangerous as one traveled through multiple countries. There were also pirates that would raid ships on the seas and rivers. Trading could also be very expensive. People would tax traders who were on their land as they traveled through. Cities like ours, that has access to trade routes along the water, could significantly profit from trade. The port was a busy place, and all products that came through the port were taxed. Trading also became a way for some groups, like the Jews, who were discriminated against during the Middle Ages to make a living. Sometimes it was hard to get to the place you wanted to go while just walking, so traders started using ships to cover these greater distances. The use of ships was a big moment in trade because it allowed for trade to cover a greater distance to get where you were going faster and carry more stuff. Trade helped to connect Europe and the Middle East. In addition to travel on water, there was also well-established trade routes on the land. The fine leather produced in the city would often travel for many weeks by camel caravan to reach a trading port. These traders would then often exchange their goods for other necessities and luxury items to bring back to their desert city.
Islamic towns were very self-sufficient and did not have to rely on other places for basic food and water. All things were supplied in the town. As you can see, this is the well, where the townsfolk can collect water for drinking, bathing, etc. Also, in addition to being self-sufficient, most Islamic towns had one special trade or business that they were especially good at, and was what most people did. Islamic towns also had a mosque, which was a house of learning and praying spot for them. This is where they occasionally practiced their religion, sang, and had religious celebrations. Also in these mosques, the children learned the foundation of Muslim religion and other basic lessons. Mosques had a very unique architecture. Due to their strict laws upon worshipping anyone but God himself, they did not have any statues of God or of other people in places of learning, so they instead decorated these places with geometrical patterns. Also due to the strict laws of Islam, the artists made sure to leave one purposeful small mistake to prove that no one but God was perfect. The mosque was placed in the center of the town so that everyone could reach it easily. The city was surrounded by a wall so that it would be harder for anyone to intrude upon the town.
The quality and types of Islamic houses were usually based on the wealth and status of the homeowner. Those who were poorer usually built homes of what they could find, which was often mud brick. These houses were purely functional. If you were a better off townsperson, you would have a house made of sandstone and a combination of mud too. These homes were sturdier and included more design elements. You can see examples of these houses in our growing city. The wealthy had larger and more elaborately designed and decorated houses, and if you were royalty, you had a castle. Medieval Muslim rulers made sure they had the best of everything, including the best technology, fountains, courtyards, and even indoor plumbing could be found in these homes, which were often more advanced than their Western counterparts. Many cities also had residential compounds known as quarters. These often had many families living in them and were protected by high walls. The walls provided privacy, which was important in Islam, and would create a courtyard that served as a primary family gathering place.
Mosques are the Islamic place of worship and where the community congregated. Masjid, the Arabic word for mosque, means place of prostration. Muslims say prayers 5 times a day. The noon prayer on Friday must be held at the mosque and attended by the entire male population of the city or town. Women are allowed too, but not required. The name of a mosque that holds the entire population is called Jami Masjid, which translates to Friday mosque, though the English word for it is congregational mosque. At other times of the week, the mosque is used as a place of study, a place of prayer, and a place of reflection. The mosque is normally at the center of the town. Mosques are decorated with patterns based on a circular grid. This is because it is against the beliefs of Islam to worship anything other than God. The thinking is if you don't create any false idols, no one will worship one. Minarets are the towers that stick up from the mosque. This is where the call of prayer is announced. There is normally a fountain in the courtyard that people use for washing their hands and feet before prayer. Inside the mosque, the mihrab is an indent in the wall that points toward Mecca.